Hey everybody, welcome to Q&A video number 15. Make sure you keep asking questions, doesn't matter what they're about, they can be about anything. Just don't ask me to talk about a certain game unless you're talking about a specific feature of that game. Because if you're just like, oh, well, what do you think of this game? That's a review request. I put those on the list. I do not mention those in Q&A videos. Anywho, let's go ahead and get started with a question from DavetheGrave. Do you think that Bioware has truly fallen to EA's corporate greed? Hard to say right now, because we haven't really seen a lot of huge corporate influence except for DLC sales. I mean, Dragon Age 2 had kind of a botched release. You had the issues of it not really being a finished game. I think part of that was corporate, but the other thing was Mass Effect 2's DLC was pretty pathetic. So those are the only two things I can think of that you would be referencing here. I don't really think they've fallen to it yet. I think that EA is having an influence on them, and it's not a particularly good influence. But I think they still have control over the license. They're just being pushed by corporate to release products on a certain schedule, and they're not able to finish things properly instead of actually getting things done the way they want to do them. I don't know. We'll have to see later on. Maybe Dragon Age 3 will redeem the series. Maybe Mass Effect 3 will be amazing and all that. I don't know. Next three questions are from FusionGamerElite, and also bear in mind that this guy is British. That'll come in later. But since the early days of PC gaming, limited editions of games have always had reasonable price tags. This was the trend from the 90s all the way up to around 2005. For example, the most you ever paid on a box set was around 2007 for Age of Conan. But then studios started price hiking on every single limited edition, whatever box set out there, and now they're all overpriced, bloated, and sometimes even have useless items in the box, e.g., Modern Warfare 2's Night Vision Goggles and the Prestige Edition. That was quite stupid. What do you make of all this overpricing and ridiculously oversized boxes in a time when nobody can afford it? Well, they wouldn't put it out there if nobody could afford it, so that's kind of irrelevant. Most special edition, limited edition, that sort of thing, these days come out at $70 US. Now, I don't know what that is in British pounds or euros, but it's pretty expensive. And most games retail at $60 these days. That is $10 more than the normal, which was $50 for a standard PC game and $60 for like a collector's edition of some sort. Now, a collector's edition is fine so long as it comes with stuff that you can actually enjoy. I mean, we're talking stuff like soundtracks, maybe a little bit of extra DLC, if it's, like, say, Mass Effect, for instance. The Mass Effect 3 N7 edition has extra weapons in it and such, that if you get the collector's edition, you get access to these weapons. That's kind of nice. Like art books and stuff, that's perfectly fine by me. What bothers me is when they put out these limited editions with completely stupid things in them, like the RC car in Black Ops and the Night Vision Goggles in Prestige Edition for Modern Warfare 2. Those are stupid, and I'll agree that they're... I don't know what they're thinking there. But I really don't see any problem with it. It's really just more of a demand thing than anything else. I mean, if people want a collector's edition, that's up to them. I mean, I don't really get collector's editions really all that much at all. Last one I got was technically Dragon Age 2's Bioware Signature Edition, and that was only because I pre-ordered it during a certain time. And that'll lead into another question, by the way. But, I mean, really it's up to the player themselves if they want to actually get a collector's edition. It doesn't really bother me or anything, because if they want to pay that extra money, that's up to them. Next one is, if you could pick between the old school PC boxes, like the ones that were huge and all that, and the new ones that are like DVD size cases, what would I pick and why? For him, the old school wins, because there's more in the box and you really felt like you got value for money. If you haven't seen my packaging retrospective, then this is a great time to look at it, just so you can see what he's talking about. PC games used to come in really big boxes, and they would have really big manuals in them. They would have jewel cases with the CDs in them. Lots of stuff in your box. And they took up a huge amount of shelf space. That's what I hate about them. They take up way too much shelf space, and for a collector like me, when you're having to put all these huge boxes on your shelf, it becomes kind of problematic storing things. And you can't really get everything in there optimally, because there's a lot of variation in the box sizes, and it just becomes a mess. So, these more standardized DVD-style cases, or even the paperboard boxes, I actually prefer those, because they take up less shelf space, and you get exactly what you pay for, well, one would hope anyway, which is the game itself. When I buy a game, I don't buy it for the manual, for instance. I don't buy it for the jewel case. I buy it for the game itself. And as long as the game comes in that box, I'm happy with it. Now, I do get annoyed when a game gets released and it doesn't have a manual in the box, and it's instead of PDF on the CD or something like that. That's just annoying, and that's lazy. But other than that, the small cases win out almost all the time. And the last one from FusionGamerElite is, this is under the radar for the time being, but he suspects more games will try this tactic in the future, where you can pre-order, but only during a certain time frame for the limited edition of insert game here. Usually about 2 weeks. After that, you can't pre-order the special edition of that particular game. Do I think this is fair or right? And for him, it's an absolutely abhorrent topic that damages game and developer publisher credibility, since the schedule for that game now revolves around that time frame. Best example was Dragon Age 2, which had a limited edition time frame in January before its spring launch. Well, the Bioware Signature Edition of Dragon Age 2, I don't know if that's what you're talking about here, because you're in Britain, and I don't know if they had a special limited edition other than the Bioware Signature in Britain. But over here, we knew about the Signature Edition for quite a while, and they gave us basically 2.5 months or so to actually pre-order it, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But really, the limited edition time frame stuff it's understandable, because they only want to produce a certain number of these limited editions because they cost more to produce, and so they only want to get a certain number of orders and make sure it doesn't exceed the amount where it becomes non-profitable to do so. Because, I mean, having a few of these things increases the demand for them and all that, and when you have a certain period of time where all of a sudden everybody wants a limited edition, you're going to run out of them. So it's that simple. I mean, that happens with all these collector's editions of games. It's always like that. So the time frame thing doesn't really bother me. Now, what bothers me is when, say you pre-order a game in January, and in March they announce that there's going to be a new special edition, and if you pre-order it within a certain time frame, post when they announce it, you get that limited edition. But if you pre-order before that, you don't get it. That is the kind of thing that annoys me and just makes me hate the gaming industry. It doesn't really happen all that much, luckily, but still, that kind of thing is what really, really annoys me. Not just the time frame for limited editions. Next one is from Art Sword Movies. What is your opinion on Bioshock Infinite's recently announced 1999 mode? Now, what this is basically a mode where they took out the plentifulness of ammo. Your decisions have basically permanent repercussions, namely in how you play the game, and stuff like that. It makes it a lot harder, supposedly. And this was basically requested by the fans. So I think it's an interesting idea. I'm waiting to see how it plays out, because right now I don't know much about it. But maybe it'll be good. I don't know. We'll see. Next two are from Omega Wolf Studios. First one is, what do you think about PC elitists who are arrogant to high hell? I believe Yahtzee got it right with his whole conception of the PC gaming master race and stuff like that. It was rather amusing if you haven't seen that. But a lot of PC gamers are really arrogant, and that's because they believe that the PC platform is, of course, superior to all other platforms. and that if you play consoles, that you're some simpleton that is an inferior gamer. I think that they're just bigots and really trying to compensate, I guess is the best way to say it. It's like those people who get gigantic trucks, for instance. They're just trying to compensate for being insecure. And that's really it. They're too insecure about themselves and really just whine and bitch about how consoles are destroying everything. Now, they do have some merit, don't get me wrong, with how consoles have kind of destroyed some things, but there's a certain point where you bypass legitimate complaints and go into just being an arrogant PC elitist. And I think those elitists need to lighten up. And I've been a PC gamer since the early 90s, and do I consider myself an elitist? I hope not. But I don't know if you guys see me as elitist or not, but I try to be as open-minded about consoles as possible, and it's just, the arrogance bothers me. It always really has. So this is sort of related. The next question is, what 7th gen consoles do you own? If you don't know what that generation is, that's what we are in right now. I have a Nintendo DS and an Xbox 360. And I almost never play them, because most games that gets released are released on PC, and I just prefer playing games on PC. Not to mention, console games take longer to go down in price, and their availability is a little bit more scattered, I guess you could say. Like, it took me forever, for instance, to get a copy of Tales of Vesperia, just because not many stores carry it, for instance, and stuff like that. Whereas on PC, it's very easy to go on, say, Steam or Gamersgate or GOG and just grab something with no hassles whatsoever and just be playing it within a few minutes to a few hours, depending on how big the download is. But, yeah, I do have those two consoles, and if you have seen my Red Faction Guerrilla review, that was actually of the Xbox 360 version, so there you go. Next one is from Calabokina, I guess is how you pronounce that. Do you think Guild Wars 2 sounds promising? Grinding is supposed to be a minor part of the game, PvP 2, and it will not have monthly fees, just like the original game. This seems to cover most of the issues you have with MMOs. Yes, it does seem to cover them. Thing is, while Guild Wars 1 was basically the only MMO I've ever been able to stand, I really didn't like it. Just because it was an MMO, and it had a lot of the same problems that other MMOs have. If you get rid of the monthly fees, that's a huge, huge factor, sure, but the problem is, then you have to worry about the gameplay itself more, and that's what kind of gets me there. Because I like to play games, even if they're multiplayer, I like to try and see if I can do them single player, and if I can't do that, then I kind of run into trouble. Because in a lot of cases, I don't have a lot of friends who play the same games that I do. So I tend not to go, like, say, for instance, playing an MMO. I don't tend to have many friends playing the same MMOs I do, or, well, lack thereof, I should say. So when I go into an MMO and I don't know anybody, it becomes kind of problematic. And that's probably going to be the case with Guild Wars 2 if I ever do get it, which I probably won't. I'm waiting to see what they actually do with it, because I really haven't seen all that much info on it yet, but we'll see. I'm curious about how they're going to pull that one off. Next one is from Dark Souls is Awesome. As far as fanboys go, what group pissed you off the most last year? And that would be 2011, was what he was referring to. Oh, it's hard to tell between the two big ones. Either the Battlefield 3 fanboys or the Skyrim fanboys. I'd probably say the Skyrim fanboys, because they've been pestering me since basically 2010. Whereas the Battlefield 3 fanboys have only been pestering me since about, March of 2011, somewhere around in there. Oh, it's pretty bad. But, yeah, Skyrim fanboys, easily some of the worst I've ever seen. Next one is from JMST89. What do you think of the survival horror genre, and name some notable games in it? Well, that depends on what you consider survival horror, because there's a lot of different things in there. what I generally hear in reference to survival horror is stuff like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, where they make the mechanics deliberately clunky so you don't really have much control over it, and as a result, it's relying on other things, and it's a mess, really. I have never been a fan of horror in general. I mean, I like the old classic films like The Wolfman, for instance, and Nosferatu and all that, but I'd never really been a fan of horror, no matter what it was. If you've seen my Amnesia the Dark Descent review, you can understand that. But survival horror is always something that's kind of all over the place. Like Resident Evil 4, for instance, is considered survival horror, and I like it, but it's not scary. Whereas Silent Hill, on the other hand, is almost entirely centered on the fact that it's horror, and it's considered survival horror as well, and I haven't played it, so I don't know if I like it or not, but that's the way that goes. And then you have stuff like Penumbra, which is, I guess it can technically be considered survival horror, but I don't like that at all either. So, I'm kind of all over the place on the genre. I really haven't played all that many games in it, so I can't really say too much about it. But if you're thinking about getting into it, I'd say probably the easiest way to get into it is to play Resident Evil 4. Don't bother with Resident Evil 5, though, because, oh, they went so wrong with that one. But Resident Evil 4 actually got me thinking about the genre and thinking that I might be able to get some enjoyment out of it. I don't know, though, because I haven't played all that many games in it. Anyway, that was Q&A 15, so there you go, everybody. And I will catch you guys in later videos.